Okay, by raise of hand, if I could just have raise of hand only, who here believes in 9-year-old children working 12 hours a day in back-breaking and dangerous conditions? By raise of hand. No? Okay, fine. Let's try a different one. Who here thinks it's okay for men to be forced to climb in barefoot into deep mines with no ventilation, no helmets, no drills, just a shovel and a crude hammer and a headlamp, and stay down there for 12 hours or more, often sleeping there overnight to keep drilling, inhaling methane and noxious fumes, and at a constant threat of losing life or limb to cave-ins or gas blowouts? If you believe in that, raise your hand. Okay, who here believes that it's okay to pollute rivers used by millions for drinking water, bathing, and cooking with minerals that can cause birth defects, cancer, and lung disease? Nobody. Wow, I think not even one person. I think I may be in the wrong room. I'm sorry. Okay. Now, next question. Raise your hand if you have a smartphone. Any smartphone. Apple, Samsung, LG, Acer, Sony. That's it? That's it? Okay. Raise your hand if you have a laptop at home. Okay. Now, I don't mean to be mean, but you are supporting child labor, the death and dismemberment of thousands of minors every year, and the pollution of drinking water for millions. Okay. Pat yourselves on the back. The recent electronics revolution that has really changed the way we live our lives. I try to describe it. I grew up when there was no such thing as a cell phone. Right? I grew up before the internet, and you did as well. Right? Our electronics revolution is powered by lithium-ion batteries, which are amazing because lithium-ion batteries are able to pack so much energy into such a small area. Your smartphone would be the size of a briefcase, or even bigger. Not like the old cell phones, if you remember the ones that were like in little cases, like little purses. Those were very crude cell phones, with not even a tenth of the computing power of your current cell phone. Your current cell phone, if it did not have a lithium-ion battery, would probably be the size of a suitcase. Your laptop would be bigger than a desktop, which means that you couldn't carry it to the airport and to wherever you're going. Now, one of the essential ways that lithium-ion batteries are able to do this is because they have a mineral called cobalt. Cobalt used to be known as a mineral that created a beautiful dark blue dye. But it also happens to have properties such as that when you put cobalt into a lithium-ion battery, you are able to create incredibly dense concentrations of energy. And that's only able to be done with the use of cobalt. Scientists have tried many times to create batteries that are cobalt-free. They cannot do it, as of yet. So in the meantime, we need cobalt. Where does the world keep its cobalt? Under the ground in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is neither democratic nor a republic, but it might be Congo. How do they get it out of the ground? Oh, there's many ways. There are massive industrial corporations that strip mine the land, leaving behind incredible amounts of toxic waste. But then there are what's called artisanal mines. Now, when you hear the word artisanal, you probably picture some hipster dude in Brooklyn making artisanal pickles or artisanal pumpernickel bread with a big handlebar mustache that he uses handlebar mustache wax on when he makes his artisanal bread. An artisanal miner is not exactly the same thing. An artisanal miner is a guy living in a one-room shack who every day, 7 days a week, goes barefoot to a hole in the ground with nothing but a shovel and a crude hammer. Barefoot, he climbs in and he goes deep and deep and deeper. The reporters who reported that they didn't want to go down there, they sent him down with a head camera. Be able to get a picture of what's going down there. And they're crawling through tunnels deep underground where they're at constant risk of cave-in. And there they are with a little headlamp. That's all there is. They're sitting there hacking away at the ground. And they're pulling out 2 tons a day by hand. from these mines, which then get sold at these stores called comptoirs, which are run by Chinese people, because the Chinese run the entire mining of Congo. The Chinese make most of the lithium-ion batteries in the world. And there, the Chinese guy scans the rocks and dirt that they pulled out of the ground with their hands and their fingers and says, oh yeah, this is 12%. I'll give you $2 for this. If they're lucky, on a good day, they make $2 to $3 a day. Not enough to pay for what they need to live, for flour and water. Their children are going down there into the mines. Miners are constantly being dismembered. When there are cave-ins in the mines, does anybody pay for any kind of support for that family that now has a father who's missing one arm and one leg? Nope. What about when there's a death, as there frequently are deaths? Mrs. Paz, can you do me a favor and just check on the video camera? It keeps making noises, it may be dying or something. Here I'm talking about the miners and I'm worried about the video camera dying? What's wrong with me, Leiby? Everything's kosher? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. The squeegee guy behind me?
Right.
Give a big round of applause for the squeegee guy.
Give him a bucket.
Still can't see through the window.
Okay, so then these rocks are pulled out of the earth and they're washed in the rivers. That's mostly done by the women. And as the rocks are washed in the rivers, all this cobalt and other minerals are washing into the water, where it literally is making the water incredibly unsafe for drinking. And how does that all end up? I'm just as guilty as everybody else here. This beautiful thing right here. The iPhone. Smartphone has 5 to 10 grams of cobalt. A laptop has about 1 ounce of cobalt. And what's the greatest offender of cobalt? The electric car. Let's go green. Let's go green and buy a Prius that now has about 20 pounds of cobalt in its lithium-ion battery pack. Now, I just bought a laptop last week for $185. $185. That's it. For a laptop.
Where did you get it?
Cell companies. Cell phone companies will give away free smartphones all the time when you sign up for their service. How are these things so cheap? The only way that those things are so cheap is because men, women, little boys, and girls are working all day in dark, noxious holes deep in the ground, pulling cobalt out by the ton in sacks and selling them to companies that sell them to companies that sell them to companies that sell them to Apple, to Samsung, to Acer, and all the other manufacturers. What have we done about this? Well, I'll tell you, the U.S. actually has very tight regulations about other minerals coming out of Congo. Congo has been embroiled in a civil war for decades. Militias running around with children soldiers, killing, cutting short sleeve, long sleeve. Horrific atrocities are going on. So most of the nations of the world have come together and cracked down on a lot of the minerals coming out of Congo. Did they crack down on cobalt? No. Should I tell you why not? Because if they cracked down on cobalt, then we wouldn't be able to get these beautiful things for so cheap. And that amazing Silicon Valley flow of electric gold would start to peter out. So we leave cobalt alone. Oh, we don't get our diamonds from Congo. No. That's a restricted mineral. We don't get this mineral or that mineral from Congo. But we can't make any restrictions on cobalt because 40% of the world's cobalt is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a phenomenon. America offshores its ethical problems. We don't believe in unethical treatment of workers. We don't believe in slavery. We don't believe in polluting the environment and the drinking water, so we don't do it. Over here. No. We let other countries do it. And then we buy their ridiculously cheap products. Have you ever walked into a Walmart recently? How do you think you can walk out of a Walmart with 4 carts worth of stuff for less than $1,000? That isn't being made by adult, skilled American hands working in OSHA-certified factories. No. Who's making all that clothing? Who's getting the cobalt or the lithium for your electronics? How much strip mining is being done to produce your $45 microwave? Yeah, well, you can return it any time. We'll just throw it out. So once in a while, a young scrappy reporter with a hankering for a Pulitzer Prize goes out there and comes back and reports on the crazy abuses that are going on. And we rise up in feigned outrage. We find out that the conditions in the Foxconn factory that was making our iPhones were so deplorable that 17 workers committed suicide by jumping off the buildings of the factories that were building these iPhones. We can't believe it. The iPhones are so pretty. And Steve Jobs made a beautiful presentation showing all the amazing capabilities of the newest iPhone. And then Apple promises that they're going to clean up their supply chain. And we say, okay, great, Baruch Hashem. And we go back to our reality TV shows, happy that we don't have to feel guilty anymore. Yay! We're all ethical again. The cobalt mining has been called out for over a decade. I only know about it because 2 days ago or 3 days ago in the Washington Post, they had an amazing expose about it. But for over a decade, people have been screaming bloody murder, literally, about the cobalt mining. But it's been fine for us because we offshore our ethical problems. Send them abroad to factories in Mexico and in Chile and in Vietnam. We've been offshoring our ethical problems for decades. Actually, no. We've been offshoring our ethical problems for centuries. No. Hold on a second. We've been offshoring our ethical problems for thousands of years, since the very beginning of mankind. Let's talk about the very first ethical, moral problem that mankind faced. Adam and Eve were put in the garden, which was an amazing, beautiful place. And they were given one simple directive by God. Eat! Enjoy! This place is beautiful. It's 71 degrees all the time. There's fruit, all kinds of luscious fruit growing off the trees. You'll have nothing to worry about. You'll have plenty. Everything will be beautiful and amazing and good. I'm asking you to do one thing. Do not eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Within a few hours, Adam and Eve are munching on the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And God comes to them and says, what are you guys doing? Let's see the verses inside. What happens? Genesis 3, 9 through 13. And the Lord God called out to the man and said, where are you? What are you doing? Where are you? What's going on? And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the fruit of the tree, and I did eat. And the Lord God said to the woman, what is this that you have done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Yes, my friends, for as long as we have been human beings, we have been blaming others for our problems. I wish I wasn't an alcoholic, but I grew up with an alcoholic dad who beat me all the time. I don't really like talking gossip about people. All my friends, that's all they want to talk about. What am I going to do? Leave all my friends? I would have been there on time, but my kids weren't ready. They never got dressed on time. Sorry, officer, I didn't mean to speed. I was just going with the flow of traffic. I really want to lose weight, but I keep going to all these Jewish community functions and all they serve is cake, cake, and cake. Trust me, if it was up to me, I'd be more religious. I see the beauty in it. But that's just not the way my family raised me. You think I want to be an angry person? You try living with my kids crawling up and down your wall, screaming and shouting at all times. And you would be just the same as me. We all outsource our ethical failings. It's as human a trait as breathing. Forget about the cobalt in your laptop. Mine by hand. Okay, I'm just going to ask, please, this has happened now for about 4 weeks in a row. Please, do not outsource the problem of your phone to the rest of the class. Please make sure that before you come into this class, you turn off your phones. I'm sorry. For like 3-4 weeks, I didn't say anything. I'm begging because it's just really gotten to the point where it's been disruptive for about 3-4 weeks in a row. Forget about the cobalt in your laptop, mined by hand, in deadly mines in Congo. Forget about the $5 shirt that you just bought in Walmart made by children in Vietnam. Forget about the milk that you put in your coffee this morning that was milked by illegal immigrants working 80-hour weeks at below minimum wage with no overtime and no health protections, because that happens too. I've read those exposés too. Let's talk about you, my friends, and me. Let's talk about the things that I do, the things that I say, the things I don't do, and the things I don't say. Aren't we all outsourcing the morality of those actions to others? Don't we blame anyone and everyone but ourselves for our own failings? It's our parents' fault. It's the terrible teachers I had. Oh, do you know what the Hebrew school teachers were like when I was a kid? It's our community's fault. They haven't gotten this proud. Do you know what's going on in our community? Oh, there's this and there's that. We can love to talk about the problems of our community. It's our friend's fault. It's our spouse's fault. It's our children's fault. It's anyone's fault but mine. I want to tell you a story about a man named Jocko Willink, or Commander Jocko Willink, the man who led U.S. Navy SEAL Team 3 Task Unit Bruiser in one of the most infamous battles of modern warfare, the battle to take back the city of Ramadi in Iraq in 2006. Ramadi was a city of 400,000 human beings that fell apart into incredible chaos in the Anbar province of Iraq. Shiites were killing Sunnis, Sunnis were killing Shiites, and anyone else was fair game. There was between 30 and 50 attacks every single day. Citizens were being slaughtered in the streets. Buildings were being blown up. Everyone used to call it the lost city of Ramadi. It was hopeless. The U.S. decided it was time to take back Ramadi. And eventually, they would, by the way, and reduce the attacks first from 30 to 50 a day, down to 5 a day, down to 1 a day, down to 3 a week, down to 1 a week, down to 1 a month, and then to even less, to the point where Ramadi for a while was the safest city in all of Iraq. Commander Jocko Willink was in charge of the first forward assault on Ramadi on a November morning in 2006. It was going to be a massive assault. The city was filled with insurgents, Mujahideen, also called the Muj by the army, filled with the Muj. It was not going to be an easy city to take. And they decided that their best tactical option was to go in first and take an area called the Mal'ab district, which was like a market district, which was where a lot of the heaviest insurgency was, and they figured we got to take off the head of the snake. Now, it was a coordination of dozens of different units. You had the Navy SEALs, U.S. Marine, U.S. Army, Iraqi Army led by U.S. advisors. And the attack starts on the pre-dawn hours, and by 7 a.m., the fighting has been going on for 2 hours already, and the city is rocked in battle. The fog of war hangs heavy on the city, literally the fog of war. There's just smoke everywhere where insurgents are lighting massive tire circles so they can cover their tracks or hide where they are. There's the dust coming up off of all the buildings that are being shot. There's shells exploding everywhere. If you can imagine what it's like 7 a.m. in Ramadi on this morning, all you hear, RPG missiles are flying, tanks are blowing buildings apart. And U.S. Navy SEALs Commander Jocko Willink is right in the middle of this, coordinating. He has a team of U.S. Navy SEAL snipers. They don't go as one, they go as a team. They just disappeared off the map. They were in one position, they had to fall back from that position. He hasn't heard from them. Around 7 o'clock, he gets a call from another team. It's an Iraqi team, an Iraqi army team led by U.S. advisors. And they say, we need a QRF, a quick reaction force. A quick reaction force is 4 Humvees, each equipped with a 50-millimeter gun. They see we're under heavy fire here. We need a quick reaction force. Send it over quick. Literally, not 40 seconds later, he gets another call. His Navy SEALs that have disappeared off the map, they call in. They see we need a heavy QRF. A heavy quick reaction force is made up of 2 M1A2 Abrams tanks, followed by foot soldiers. Where does he go? What does he do? He follows the tanks. And he comes upon a position. It's a bunch of U.S. advisors leading a group of the Iraqi army. They've already lost a man. There's this big building there, and it's filled with insurgents who are putting up a fierce firefight. They already lost one man, and he looks at the building. The building is pockmarked. They've been shooting at it with their 50-millimeter guns, round after round. And there's gunfire coming back, grenades coming back from inside the building. And he sees the U.S. Marine sergeant over there, and he's calling in an airstrike on the building. Just take it out. Level the building. Then he realizes something's not right over here. So he slows down. In the midst of war, he slows down. Let's think this through. What's going on over here? Building, Iraqi soldier, killed as he was coming in. Now they're shooting at it. I lost my Navy SEALs team. They're supposed to be in this area. We've never even seen those insurgents. He says, Marine, hold off on that airstrike. He himself starts walking up to the building that's filled with the insurgents. All these buildings in Ramadi, they're surrounded by these 8-foot concrete walls. They've got a gate. And he's coming around, and he comes out. He comes face to face with the team leader, the U.S. Navy SEAL sniper team. The U.S. Navy SEAL sniper team had fallen back and taken cover in this building. The Iraqi army was not supposed to be there. They were not supposed to be in the area until the Navy SEALs team had called the area clear, but they came in anyway. They sent their first man in. He's not wearing a U.S. Army uniform, and he's carrying an AK-47, which is not a U.S. weapon. The Navy SEALs panic. They kill the Iraqi soldier. The Iraqi soldiers outside with their U.S. advisors start bombarding the building. The Navy SEALs hold up in the building, are putting everything they can, fighting back at this unseen enemy outside, covered in the fog of war. There's dust and dirt everywhere. believe it. He just committed. That just meant there was what's the gravest of errors. It's called blue on blue. Friendly fire. Fratricide, as it's known. The killing of a friend by mistake. The worst thing that can be done in war. So he quickly says to the Navy SEALs, it's blue on blue! Stand down! He gets together that team, the sniper and his accompanying officers. They're all shaken. They've been under bombardment for an hour already. Their building is coming apart. One of the soldiers had his face all fragged up. He says, okay guys, I'm pulling you guys out of here. You guys go back to the forward base. He calls in for an armored vehicle, personnel carrier. They come, they take all the soldiers out. And he goes back into the battle. But he's haunted. He can't believe it. Blue on blue. He gets back at the end of the day and he knows. I mean, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. He opens up his laptop. And there, very first emails from his commanding officers. And it says, shut everything down. Conduct no more operations. Investigating officer, commander, master chief, and I are en route. That's it. He's going before the tribunal. They are going to splay him alive. How did this happen? That we had a blue on blue on the very first day of our attack on Ramadi. Okay, he's a professional, he's a soldier, he's a Navy SEAL, shuts everything down, and he starts preparing. I mean, it's almost like a court case. It's not a court-martial, but they're going to take apart what he did. So he prepares this extensive PowerPoint presentation going through what happened that morning, minute by minute, where all the errors went in. When did the Iraqis go in when they weren't supposed to go in? And the Navy SEAL who shot the Iraqi. There's protocols. You don't shoot until you positively identify your enemy. And what about the Navy SEALs who didn't report their location when they changed location? He's writing it all down. He's got a PowerPoint presentation showing everything that went on there. And the next day, sure enough, the investigating officer, the commander, master chief is there, his commanding officer is there, and they say, okay, we're just going to go to the chow hall, we're going to get some food, and then we're going to sit down and hash this out. And Jocko Willink, the commander's left there, sitting there, he's going over his PowerPoint last time, there's something missing. Who was at fault over there? He can't figure it out. Finally, he realized it was what he's got to do. They all come in. There's Iraqi soldiers there. There's the guy with the wounded face, it's all bandaged up. He's there. His commanding officer is there. Commander Master Chief is there. Investigating officer is there. All the other officers are there. And he starts his presentation. He says, gentlemen, yesterday at 0700 hours, there was a blue on blue. Whose fault was it? And the U.S. advisors leading the Iraqi troops says, it was my fault, sir. I should never have let those Iraqi troops into that area. They were not supposed to be there. And Jocko says, no, you're wrong. Whose fault was it? So the Navy SEAL who shot at the Iraqi soldier, he says, sir, it's my fault. I should have positively identified the enemy before shooting. He says, no. Whose fault was it? And the guy, the communications officer from the sniper team says, sir, it was my fault. I should have radioed in our new position. He says, no. And all these SEALs are all ready to take responsibility. He says, no. You know whose fault it was? It was my fault. I'm the commanding officer of this operation. And this happened on my watch. It was my fault. I am terribly sorry about what happened. And he looks at the soldier with the face bandaged up. He says, I'm sorry for what happened to your face. It could have been worse, and I know that. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that never, ever happens again. Did Commander Jocko Willink lose his job? No, he didn't. He was allowed to remain there. And he led his men into battle again and again. And they took back the city of Ramadi. And when he was done his service in Iraq, Commander Jocko Willink came back to America and became the trainer of all U.S. Navy SEAL commanders. And wrote the training manual so that in the future, they would all follow the same philosophy. It's a philosophy called extreme ownership. Taking extreme ownership for what happens under your command. Today, if you're in the Navy SEALs, and it's not easy to get into the Navy SEAls, and it's even harder to become of the level where you're about to be a commander. But they'll run you through training exercise after training exercise. And when things go bad, you're going to be brought back into the room and you're going to be debriefed. And if you come into that room and you start blaming your subordinates, they'll explain to you, no, that's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is extreme ownership. And if you don't get it, if you can't get on board with extreme ownership, you will not make commander in the U.S. Navy SEALs. This is one quote from Jocko Willink in his book called Extreme Ownership. For leaders, the humility to admit and own our mistakes and develop a plan to overcome them is essential to success. The best leaders are not driven by ego or personal agendas. They are simply focused on the mission and how to best accomplish it. The opposite of outsourcing your ethical problems is taking extreme ownership for your ethical problems. My friends, Yom Kippur is the day when we as Jews take extreme ownership over our actions. And it's only when we take extreme ownership over our actions and our failings that we can overcome them. Only when we take ownership of our failings can we create a plan to overcome them. If all my failings are because of my parents or my community or my children or my spouse, then I'm doomed. I'll never overcome those problems because they're not mine to overcome. It's my problem. It's my parents' problem. It's my wife's problem. It's my kids' problems. How can I overcome them? It's not me, it's them. I can't fix them. If I take ownership, then I can fix them. And even more importantly, only when I take ownership of my problems can I ask God to help me, remove them from me. Because I can't ask God to remove my parents' failings, or my wife's failings, or my kids' failings, or my community's failings, or my teacher's failings, or the guy who looked at me the wrong way in shul's failings. I can only ask God to help me. He's not taking orders for other people. While I was preparing this, I realized the answer to something that's bothered me for a long time. If we look back to the very first Yom Kippur ever, when was it? It was after the Jews served the golden calf, the Chet HaEgel. It was a terrible disaster. God takes the Jews out of Egypt, brings them into the desert, serves them miraculous manna, the man, it was a miraculous food, takes care of their every need, saves them from the Egyptians who are pursuing them by drowning the Egyptians in the sea so they never have to worry about seeing them back again. And after 50 days, he says, do you guys want to marry me, basically? Do you want to be my treasured people? And we say yes, and God says, great. Here are my ground rules. I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Do not have any other gods before me. Don't take my name in vain. Honor the Sabbath day. Honor your parents, your mother, and your father. Don't kill, don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Don't testify falsely. Don't covet. I'll get to the rest. 40 days later. 40 days later, the Jews are dancing around a golden calf. Dancing around an idol. Saying, this is your God, O Israel. God is incredibly angry at the Jewish people, and he's ready to wipe them out and start all over again. So Moshe Rabbeinu, goes on a campaign to save the Jewish people. What is his first line of defense to God? His first line of defense is found in the book of Shmos of Exodus 32:31. Rabbi Cohen, is there a way to boost the air conditioning here a little bit? Can you lower the temperature here a little bit? Thank you so much. What is Moshe's first line of defense? Here's what he says. And Moshe returned to the Lord and said, please, this people has committed a grave sin. They made themselves a god of gold. Wow, Moshe. Great defense attorney there. Thank you. I don't know what law school you went to. That's your first line of defense? Please! They committed a terrible sin. They made a god of gold. No. I'll tell you what you should have said, Moshe. Here's what you should have said. God, it wasn't the Jewish people. It was the Erev Rav. It was the mixed multitude that came up with them from Egypt, who were so familiar with idol worship. They were the ones who came and said, we need to create an idol. Which is true. They were the instigators. Or, he should have tried this defense. He should have said, God, it's not their fault. The Satan tricked them. He showed them an image of me dead in the heavens. And therefore they felt like they had no leader. They needed a leader. Satan was tricking them. It's not their fault. It's the Satan's fault. If you didn't want them to sin, why did you tempt them with the Satan? Or he could say, God, it wasn't their fault because Aaron had a whole system for delaying them. And they had to get the gold, and he was going to take days to make this gold. And there was a man who took a piece of shard of pottery that had God's name written on it. If you guys remember the story, we talked about it when we did Genesis. And it said Ale Shur on it. It said, come up, O ox. And he threw it into the fire, and a golden calf came out. It would have taken them a week to make the golden calf, and I would have been down here and would have taken care of it. You made a miracle. You made a golden calf come out of a fire. There was a pot of bubbling gold, and you made a golden calf come out. You expect them not to bow down to that? That's what Moses should have said. But no. Moses is smarter than we, than us, than I and you. We would have said that. Moses took extreme ownership immediately. He says, God, we messed up. And now I want you to forgive us. Until we take ownership, God can't forgive us. If we're busy blaming everybody else for our problems, God can't forgive us because they're not our problems. Moshe immediately, in the very first time ever the Jewish people are facing a sin of grave magnitude, comes out right away and takes extreme ownership. And you know what was the end of that whole conversation? It took a long time. It took 80 days. But at the end of 80 days, God comes out and says, Vayomer Hashem, salachti kidvarecha. God comes out and says, I have forgiven like your words. You are willing to come out and take ownership of the situation. I am willing to forgive. And that, my friends, was the very first Yom Kippur ever. That's the source of Yom Kippur. Someone taking ownership for their problems and God saying, salachti kidvarecha. If you're willing to take responsibility, I am willing to forgive. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
You know, there are three kinds of Yom Kippurs. Last week we did 3 Rosh Hashanahs. There are 3 kinds of people who experience Yom Kippur differently. There are those who love it. They come out of services, and if I've heard this once, I've heard it 50 times. Oh, the services were so beautiful. It was like a Broadway show. I'm not trying to be offensive. There's no judgments. There's no blame. I don't blame anybody who says that. I don't judge them. That's the way they were brought up or whatever. But anybody who walks out of the service of Yom Kippur and says, oh, it was so beautiful, it was like a Broadway service, has got no clue what Yom Kippur is all about. No offense to anybody intended, honestly. But if that's what you think Yom Kippur is, it was beautiful, it was like a Broadway service, like a Broadway show, no. You're not getting it. And there's another level of people. There's the people, and there are many of these people who wish they could fast forward right through Yom Kippur. Why don't we wake up on Monday morning or Tuesday morning, just hit the fast forward button, and then come out Sukkot. You know, we don't have to, instead of having to do all the cooking for Sukkot, I'd rather just come out. Sukkot, beautiful. We go out to the Sukkah. We eat amazing meals. We shake the lulav and the esrog. We sing Hallel in the synagogue. It's beautiful. Let's just fast forward through this whole Yom Kippur. I don't like Yom Kippur. It's long. It's uncomfortable. The services are never ending. Literally. And every page that I open up, it just makes me feel worse about myself. I'm guilty. I have been disloyal. I have stolen. I have spoken slanderously. How many times can I say that? I say it quietly to myself, and then we got to do it as a community. Let's all beat ourselves up together. Beautiful. Many people just don't like Yom Kippur. It's an uncomfortable day. And there's the third kind of people. The people who really get Yom Kippur. And those people, wow, boy, do they appreciate Yom Kippur. It's an amazing day. It's a day that God says, come. Let me help you clean up the oil spill of your life. Let's get that black gunk that's covering your life. Let's clean it up. It could be the anger that boils over into all your relationships. It could be your jealousy that consumes you day and night. It could be the lust that's invading your home and your heart. It could be your laziness that just stops you from doing anything of consequence. It could be your gluttony and your need for more and more and more. It's affecting everything. And God says, come. I'm going to clean it up with you. Yom Kippurim, l'chaper, to clean away. Imagine our lives. Think about the ocean covered in a slick layer of black gunk, and God says, today's the day we clean it up. Like that the squeegee guy. Whoosh, 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 you know, like, squeak, 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 squeak. And we come out squeaky clean. How amazing is Yom Kippur? But in order for that to happen, I need to take ownership. I need to be ready to stand up and own my mistakes and admit them to God, to myself, to verbalize them. Like Jocko Willink said, for leaders, the humility to admit and own our mistakes and develop a plan to overcome them is essential to success. The three parts of teshuvah, the three essential elements of teshuvah is charata, vidoy, and azivas hachet, which means regret, speaking it out, and leaving it behind. Which is exactly what is the plan for extreme ownership. Admit your mistakes. Be big enough to admit that it's not your parents' fault. Yes, your father used to beat you and your mom yelled at you, or your mom beat you and your dad yelled at you. And yes, you had bad teachers who pushed you to the back of the class and said bad things to you. And yes, your spouse is always nagging you for this or for that. And your children are not exactly the angels you hoped they would be. That's got nothing to do with your moral failings. Charata, the ability to admit and regret what we've done and take it upon ourselves, to own it. To own it. To say, yes, these are my failings. They're my problems. And I've got to work on them. And I can't blame anybody else for them anymore. And develop a plan to overcome them. Azivas hachet. That is the hallmark of leadership. Do you want to be a commander in life? Do you want to be a leader in life? Or do you want your life to just be led along by all the things that keep happening to you? Are you leading your life? Or are you just reacting to everything that's happening to you? My parents did this. I'm like, is that what rules your life? Are you some sort of following robot that gets different things fed into you, different inputs, and you just respond with no control, no ability to command? Or are you going to be a commander in life? You open up the siddur, you open up the machzor, and you read from the vidoy, from the things that you're supposed to own up to. One second. And it says, Ashamnu, I'm guilty. Yes, I have the ability to make choices. And I'm guilty of my own mistakes, not my dad, Not my mom, not my teachers, not my school, not my community, not my wife, not my kids. I have bagadnu. We have betrayed. We have not kept our side of the bargain in so many relationships that we have. Our spouses, our children, our parents invested in us. God invested in us. And we haven't kept our side of the bargain. It's okay. Own it. Own it. It's okay. As soon as you own it, you can handle it. Instead of being a victim of circumstance for the rest of your life, you can start to take command and control over your life, and God will help you. He'll clean it up for you. He'll squeegee it up for you. Mechal lanu, kaper lanu, slach lanu. God's going to forgive. He'll cleanse. He'll remove all the deep-held negativity that we have, but we just got to call out to Him and say, I own it, it's mine, now take it away. God says, fine, but I can't take away anybody else's problems for you. Dibarnu dofi, we have speaking slander. No, it's not your friend's fault. Be a commander. Yes, all your friends talk gossip. Are you a commander or a follower? Are you a human being or a robot? Every day, Jocko wakes up at 4:30, and he has 3 alarms to wake him up. He has one that's plugged into his electrical outlet. He has one that's battery powered, and he has one that's hand wound. Why do you think Jocko has 3 alarms? So, if you're like me, you can relate to any of these 3 scenarios. I had an electric clock. I set the alarm, but there was a blackout in the middle of the night, and the alarm got reset, and then I wake up the next morning, and it's 8:45, and the thing is blinking 12:00, and I'm like, oh my gosh! I missed it! I missed my flight, I missed my meeting, I missed my responsibility, whatever it was. Or, I had the battery-powered one, and guess what? When I went to bed, it was showing 3 bars, and then it just died. I don't know what happened. Or the hand-wound one just went out. It just unwound itself too early, whatever it was. So Jocko takes extreme ownership for his life. He has 3 alarm clocks. He's not only a victim of circumstance. Is it possible, by the way, that all 3 of them will malfunction? Yes, it is. Incredibly unlikely, but possible. That's called extreme ownership. Stop with the excuses. I tried to, but my electricity went out, but my battery died, but. In the Ne'ilah service, at the end of Yom Kippur, we say the following. Ata nosein yad laposhim. You reach out a hand, even to willful sinners, people who did, not just I sinned by mistake, I didn't realize it, I did it, and I knew it was wrong, and I did it. V'yamincha peshuta lekabel shavim, and your right hand is outstretched to accept people who want to return to you. V'atlamdenu Hashem Elokeinu lehisvados lefanecha, and you, Hashem, our God, taught us to confess before you, to take ownership before you. I'll call avonosenu for all of our failings. Leman nechtal me'oshek yadenu, so that we can withdraw our hands from thievery. What thievery? Raise your hand if you stole this year. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Raise your hand if you stole this year. No, we're not. Most of us, I would say a good 98% of us are not stealing. And I know who that 2% is. I'm kidding. Most of us are not stealing. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of explanations. One is that we're all stealing the most important resource that God has invested in us, which is our time. God gave us so much time. And when we don't use it properly, that's really a tragedy. It's like we're stealing from God. God gave us time to do great things with it. And we go and take it and use it for frivolous things. We're stealing time. It's like imagine you give money to your financial planner and say, here, please put this in my IRA. And he goes and puts it in his own bank account and goes and buys his wife a beautiful dress. That's stealing, right? I gave it to you to put in my IRA, not to go buy your wife a dress. Same thing. God gave us his time and said, here, I'm giving you this chunk of time to do great things with it. And we say, yeah, that's true, God, but I'm I'd rather just sit back and sip tall, cool glasses of lemonade and watch TV or read a book or whatever. No, I'm not saying you can't ever watch TV or ever read a book, but I'm saying if that's what we're doing with way too much of our time, that's not what God gave us that time for. So that's one thing we can say we're stealing, but I'll tell you more. You ready? Who are you stealing from? You're stealing from yourself. You're robbing yourself of all your abilities by outsourcing your ethical failings to someone else. You have the ability to be a giant. You have the ability to be a commander of your own life. And every time you take your failings and you blame it on someone else, who are you? Are you hurting them? No, you're robbing yourself. You're robbing yourself of all that you could be. You're robbing yourself. Yom Kippur is the day we can stop all that. We can be commanders. We can own our life. Just take ownership of our failings. Talk them out to God. God will help clean them up. Yom Kippurim. It's a day of cleansing. It's a day where He'll wipe it all away. I am the commander of my life, and I ask you, God, to help me with it. I am responsible for my moral failings, and I ask you, God, to help me with it. When we do that, God says, Salachti kidvarecha. I have forgiven according to your words, according to your ownership, according to your boldness and courage to be able to take upon yourselves your own mistakes. Now I forgive, God says. I'll help you clean it all up. We'll get all that gunk out of the way, and you'll go out into the year clean, clear, and ready to tackle everything you owned. Thank you very much, and may we all have a Gemar Chasima Tova.